the bracket model, we're going to go ahead and create the assembly. There are two of those brackets in the assembly. We also have a flat bearing, a 1/2 inch long beam. And I've placed some of those in this assembly already. You can see two of the brackets. I'm going to start by taking one of those 1/2 inch beams. But the first thing I'm going to do is actually ground one of the brackets. This stops it moving around. Next thing I'm going to do is open that file and make the sketch visible. You may recall that I added some circles in the sketch, and those will help with the assembly. With the constraint tool, I'm going to go ahead and use an axis, and that's where those circles come in handy. Click on OK. Now it's moved kind of way up to the top here, so let me drag that back down. And I'm going to finish that off by adding a second constraint between two faces. Just like the face on the bracket and the top face on that little beam. It actually flips it around, but that's okay. Now back into the assembly. I'm going to assemble the bearing onto the bracket. The bearing is where the drive shaft of the motor will go through, plus we're going to have a couple of plastic rivets holding that onto the bracket. So I'm starting by using axis and clicking apply, and again it's kind of moved out of the way, so let me click cancel, bring that a little closer so you can see it, and continue with the constraints. To finish off the constraints, I'll use another axis and use one of those circles again, apply, and then the two faces to bring it onto the correct area. And click OK, which finishes the process. We can now get one of the plastic rivets which will be holding that bearing onto the bracket. These are slightly oversized, so when you place them in the bearing, they try to stretch out, and that's what holds them in place. I'm using an insert constraint this time, so just two circular edges. Wrong way around, let's correct that, and then click on OK. I've now added another rivet onto the bearing and brought in a new beam as well. I'm going to hold that beam in place by placing standard content from the content center. I'm going to go to fasteners, bolts, and in this case I like to look at the fact that I've actually reduced the number of items in here, and I've done that by looking at add edit filter. So I encourage you to reduce the number of entries in content center. I'm going to go to a socket button head cap screw. You'll notice that I move around and it actually selects the size for me if there's a standard size that fits one of those holes. I actually know the size, so I'm going to go to change size. It's a number 8, 1/4 inch long, and the thread type is UNC. Now there's a few of those, but I'm going to actually just place one so you can see how the process works. I can now go ahead and constrain that using an insert constraint. Select the bottom circle, circle on the sketch, and click on OK. We can now see I've added many more, and this is actually now complete. So there are 4 more of those beams, complete with nuts and bolts there. And I've also added a couple of washers. These belong to the motor. You can add them here or in the main assembly.